How would you feel if the next mainline Fire Emblem game was exclusively a social sim? How do you feel about violent, felonious assault? What is up, YouTube? This is RSMario here, bringing you another Fire Emblem video. Something I've been meaning to do, something I wanted to do for a while, but there really hasn't been anything to talk about. Like, you think it's a Pokemon drought out here? Bro, alright, Fire Emblem is like the Sahara Desert right now, okay? Niggas is dying, okay? There's no information out here for Fire Emblem. There's not even, like, fake leaks about Fire Emblem right now. Alright, so there's really been no meat on the bone to like really do any videos about Fire Emblem. And then lo and behold, Nintendo Life comes down and they just deliver me the perfect opportunity to do a Fire Emblem video. From the top, it says Fire Emblem's future may not be in turn-based combat. So just to put this in context, this is like a soapbox or like an editorial. So this is not like, you know, something like actual journal. This is not like actual journalism. This is this person's opinion. All right. So, you know, everybody's got a right to their opinion, but I also have a right to critique your opinion. So let's get on into this. How would you feel if the next mainline Fire Emblem game was exclusively a social sim? While a change this drastic was almost entirely not in the cards, the identity crisis faced by Fire Emblem means that change must come. While Engage's 1.3 million sales as of March 2023 is respectable for the franchise, it marks the return to the 3DS era numbers after whispers of blockbuster status for Three Houses. The reason for this discrepancy is simple. Three Houses expanded the fan base by shifting focus away from the strategy elements, whereas Engage doubled down on its strategic roots. Actually, that's not really that true. Like, the reason why Three Houses sold so much better than Engage is because Three Houses was a completely different type of Fire Emblem game. Alright, like Three Houses was actually meant to be a new mainline Fire Emblem game. It was meant to stand on its own. Alright, the story was written that way, the characters were written that way, all of it was meant to be a Fire Emblem game on its own. Engage was meant to be an anniversary game. It was meant to be a celebration of the series as a whole. That's why there's so many hallmarks and throwbacks and straight up characters from older games in it. Everything about Engage was designed to be like this head, like this head nod, I guess. Head tilt or head nod. I go with head nod. It's like a head nod to like old school Fire Emblem. All right, you know what I'm saying, with the exception of the character designs. The character designs were completely different.
Brother, oh no.
But everything else was, all right. That's why they kind of, you know, doubled down on the strategy elements, because, you know, Fire Emblem is a strategy game. You know, like that, the simplistic story of like, oh, we have to save the world from the evil dragon. Like, that was done because that's what Fire Emblem stories have been in the past. So the only reason why Three Houses, Engage came out when it did is because Nintendo has this new knack for just sitting on completed games for like almost a whole calendar year from when they were completed. You know, that and COVID kind of played a role, because really Engage was supposed to be an anniversary title, but it is what it is. It's quite a pickle for any franchise when a popularity spike for reasons that run counter to the traditional formula. However, those that are already playing to niche genres can quickly be reshaped by such a phenomenon. Turn-based strategy games being one such genre. rarely come close to attaining million seller status. It took Fire Emblem over 2 decades to achieve this, despite being arguably the biggest player in the space. Awakening notoriously saved the franchise from imminent demise by garnering a fan base around its marriage system that later involved persona-coded social simulation of 3 houses. I mean, yeah, mainly because Awakening took advantage of the anime fan base. Like, so, like, Fire Emblem became like the anime sword game kind of with Awakening. I mean, it was kind of like that before. I mean, because, you know, OG Fire Emblem actually has an anime, but, you know, it became like that because of Awakening, because they had the waifus and you can marry them, and they kind of did that. And that was the big thing to do, because, I mean, light novels are like huge, especially in Japan. Simplifications like oversized bland maps and the removal of signature weapon triangle would have buried any other entry other than 3 houses, but the average player base wasn't focused on this. They wanted to sip tea with the Lord of Choice, romance their favorite pupil, insert collar tug here, okay, and micromanage their monastery task. Honestly, that was probably one of the worst aspects of 3 houses, is like the little micromanaging, like the like monastery stuff. To me, that was one of the worst parts of 3 houses. Like, I mean, I just did not feel like doing that. Just give me some battles that I could do in between the big story matches, so this way I can kind of like raise my people that way, you know, kind of like an RPG, you know what I'm saying? Like, if I wanted to play a visual novel or a Persona game, I would do that. You know, if Fire Emblem fans wanted to play Persona, guess what? There's like 50 of them Persona games out there. They would totally play them. The reason why 3 houses did so good is because 3 houses, the biggest thing that 3 houses did that was different was the story. The fact that this had this big epic 3-4 path story, like, that was cool, because again, most Fire Emblem fans are used to the kind of simplistic fantasy story, you know, evil dragon, evil country, you know, or there's an evil cult trying to bring back a demon lord. Like, they're used to that story. 3 houses was different. Some fans of older Fire Emblem formulas were left behind in the process, but a newfound audience doubled the franchise's reach. Fire Emblem became synonymous with its social elements, and there was no turning back. If Nintendo wanted to maintain that momentum, the momentum of its popularity. So this is kind of true, all right, and I do call this the Fire Emblem phenomenon, all right. Zelda is kind of in the same spot as well right now, whereas you've got like the OG Zelda fans that are like, oh my god, we want the old Zelda back, and then you've got like all these new open air Zelda fans that are like, bro, this is really good. And so now the fan base is kind of divided. And it was already divided as far as Fire Emblem goes between the pre-Awakening fans and the post-Awakening fans. But I think most Fire Emblem fans kind of came together for 3 houses because it gave the audience it gave the entire audience what they wanted. Like us, like, you know, Awakening fans, we got our waifus, and the OG Fire Emblem fans got that amazing story that they got from like the Jig Draw games or the Roy games or whatnot, you know. So I don't think it was the social elements. The social elements were part of it, like, you know, for more casual Fire Emblem fans, but the real divide is not like casuals versus hardcores. It's old hardcores versus modern hardcores, you know. But turning back is exactly what Nintendo tried to do with Engage. Perhaps it's more aptly, Engage tried to have its papaya and eat it too.
What do you mean by that?
Are papayas like a thing in Fire Emblem? Am I missing like an inside Fire Emblem joke, or is this like a vegan trying to do like one of those have its cake and eat it too jokes? Like, I don't know. You're missing me with that one. So change must come, or more specifically, the franchise must adapt to the wants of its largest player base, lest it risk returning to the perilous pre-awakening state. To which I ask again, what if the next Fire Emblem game was fully embraced being a social sim, even to the point of abandoning its turn-based strategy roots? No, I think that you can. Here's the thing: you can do both. All right, and this is the same thing I would say for Zelda. All right, you can do both. You can have a rich story-based Fire Emblem game with all of the elements that other people like in Fire Emblem, like waifus and S ranks. You can even kind of sprinkle in some of the social stuff and the micromanagement stuff. You can do both. Like, you can still have the turn-based strategic combat. You can still have the story. You can still have the waifus. You can do it. Like, Three Houses proves that you can do it. Like, you don't really need to get rid of one to focus on the other. You know what I'm saying? If anything, the better way to do it is to try to integrate them more together. You know, to try to make the social elements more impactful on the combat. You know, and make the combat more impactful with the social, the social stuff. Like, you know, creating bonds on the battlefield can help you in some of these social situations and stuff like that. You know, the same thing goes for for Zelda. You know, Zelda, dilemma is like, so do we go back or do we keep doing open air games with, like, you know, Pokemon style gimmicks where every game has a gimmick, you know, until we run out of gimmicks, you know what I'm saying? Like, or do we go back to the old style of like, oh, you find the hook shot and you find the gravity boots and you find this and that and you do that. You know, you can integrate those together. You know what I'm saying? You can have open air dungeons that are more like dungeons than just being like big puzzle rooms. You know what I'm saying? You can do both. Let's consider 3 possibilities of what this future could look like. If you entirely remove combat, you can then have to confront the issue that warfare is still a narrative pillar of the franchise. Perhaps a social sim in this setting could act like a commentary on the impact of an outside war. If you entirely remove combat, you then have to confront the issue that warfare is still a narrative pillar of the franchise. Perhaps a social sim in this setting could act as a commentary on the impact of war on its citizens. Think of this as a story that takes place while the turn-based Fire Emblem game you typically be commandeering is going on.
I mean, that guy should be hunted down and shot.
It's like Fire Emblem meets Life is Strange. Oh no! Character choices influenced by your interactions could lead to outcomes like permadeath. Maybe you fail to convince them to not join the war, or romance. Point is, many of the conceptual ideas and thematic elements of Fire Emblem can live on in a format that eschews combat. Combat-based entries could be relegated to remakes of classic games like Echoes. Oh man, I don't like that at all. Because essentially you're saying that the future of the franchise is just combatless. Because eventually you will run out of games to remake, and then that's it. Where are the combat-based Fire Emblem games going to go? Not to mention, if you do this, you will essentially alienate the core audience of Fire Emblem, which is something that you don't want to do. I don't understand how franchises kind of do this. Like, the way that you build a franchise is you cultivate a core audience and then you maintain them, And then you add things to that core that will bring in other people that you want to suck into your core audience, because your core audience is always going to be there because they love this. All right, this is the problem that you see from like Star Wars. Star Wars, the whole like Force is female thing, like it's political. Yeah, it definitely is. All right, you know what I'm saying? Like Kathleen Kennedy is definitely lost in the sauce when it comes to like her political agenda. But what she's trying to do is she's trying to expand the universe, the fan base of Star Wars. But what she's doing in the process is killing the core fan base of Star Wars. Once you lose that core fan base, the entire franchise loses its identity. Look at Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy did this. Final Fantasy got rid of the turn-based combat, the turn-based JRPG roots, and now what is Fire Emblem? I mean, Final Fantasy. What is it? You know what I'm saying? Like, what kind of game is Final Fantasy? You know what I'm saying? Like, look at Final Fantasy 16. I like Final Fantasy 16, especially if they ever make a PC version so I can actually play it. But it's would you look at this and say that it's a Final Fantasy game? No, Final Fantasy completely lost its identity. All right, that looks like a Devil May Cry game. You know what I'm saying? With a Final Fantasy coat of paint. The only thing that screams Final Fantasy in this game of like Game of Thrones, violence, titties, the only thing that screams Final Fantasy here is the fact that crystals are involved. Fire Emblem would go through the same process if you did this. Alright, the same thing happened with Star Wars. Star Wars got rid of the core tenets and elements of Star Wars. Now, in the Acolyte, you know what I'm saying, is another show where the Jedi suck. Alright, and now the Jedis are secretly dicks. They're secretly evil now. Like, the mystery of the Acolyte is a very good possibility that the Jedis did something terrible. And that's why, you know, strong woman of color is coming after them. So I don't think this is a good idea. Let's see what the next one is though. For a less nuclear option, turn-based combat could be an optional offshoot of the social sim story. You could choose to send armies out to automatically fight for you to net extra time for social tasks, while players who want to take point on the battlefield could still do so, balancing storytelling and pacing in this format would be difficult to strike, and creating essentially two games in one is something developers aren't often want to do. Still, a do you want to model worked for games like Fantasy Life, so perhaps there is a way to also implement it here. I mean, this kind of works, but this also kind of sounds like it would be like a Fire Emblem mobile game. This sounds like a follow-up to like Fire Emblem Heroes. Like if they wanted to do another Fire Emblem mobile game, that's what this sounds like. This doesn't really sound like a real console Fire Emblem experience, you know. But I mean, I can kind of see that this way you kind of give people what they want, but I don't think that the like visual novel audience of Fire Emblem is as big as you think it is for them to actually do this. Or they could change the combat genre to one more approachable for the average gamer. Oh no, now you blowing it. Now you blowing it, see? No. Turn-based is where it's at, okay? I mentioned the Persona stylings of Three Houses earlier, but what if they took the concept to its logical conclusion and made a full-stop medieval Persona? Frankly, little change would be needed to fit the traditional JRPG dungeons into the slots where major story beats happen in Three Houses, and fill the interim content with Memento-style dungeon crawling. No. They kind of did this with Echoes a little bit, you know what I'm saying? And it kind of sort of worked, but leaving the turn-based strategy will completely kill the game. Like that would give it the Final Fantasy syndrome, okay? All right. To be honest, even though this is this person's opinion, I don't think this is what should happen to Fire Emblem. Alright, I think Fire Emblem should keep the core of what it does. Like, look at Pokemon. Pokemon is the perfect example of how you grow a franchise. Maintain what you have. Alright? Maintain that core. Alright? And Pokemon does this. Catching, trading, battling. You know what I'm saying? Maintain that core and then add to it. Add to it, improve it. You know what I'm saying? Make the graphics better. Finish the games. Do all that kind of stuff. That's all Fire Emblem needs to do. Take that turn-based core, you know what I'm saying, with the waifus and the turn-based strategy and the good story, and then you add to it. Alright? Add in voice acting. You know, add in things like a better, you know, like better graphics. You know what I'm saying? Like, stop using like the same type of 3D graphics they use now. Maybe improve the graphics. Maybe you want to make a hyper-realistic looking Fire Emblem game, which I still don't think would be that good. I kind of like the anime style of Fire Emblem. You know what I'm saying? But give it a try once. You know what I'm saying? See if it works. You know, or you can just stick with the anime identity they already have, but tone it down a little bit so it doesn't run into that same design problem that Echoes has. Engage has. So, this was pretty long. I didn't expect this video to be that long, but it is what it is. Tell me what you think in the comments. Should Fire Emblem change? Will that risk losing its identity? Or is this lady just crazy? Tell me in the comments. Like, comment, subscribe, and as always, people, keep it real.